The year was 1876. Snow hadn't yet touched the plains, but the air was cold enough to make a woman feel like the sky was watching with breath held. Beneath the high ridge near Echo Valley, a small settlement named Hollow Creek lay hidden between cedar groves and rust-colored canyons. It was the kind of place where people came to forget, to vanish, or to be reborn. Among the settlers was Evelyn Hart, the young daughter of a Union Army medic. She worked at the only clinic in the region, just a wooden room attached to the church, with half the tools and twice the prayers. Her hands had learned to stop bleeding, set bones, and hold dying men who whispered names she didn't recognize. Evelyn had secrets. Everyone in Hollow Creek did. Hers lived behind her pale eyes in the way she moved through the world, as if she were always waiting for someone to recognize what she truly was. One morning, as the sky blushed with dawn, the preacher's son came galloping into town. His horse was foaming, and his words were half-choked with panic. "There's a fever," he cried, "up in Red Hollow. Took down 3 trappers already, the kind that boils the skin off a man's back." The townsfolk, who had already survived droughts, bandits, and blizzards, didn't flinch. But Evelyn's heart twisted. She knew fevers. She knew how they spread, not just through flesh, but through fear. Later that day, she packed supplies into her leather satchel, quinine bark, willow tincture, clean linen, and saddled her mare Clover. Reverend Silas, the town's spiritual anchor, watched her from the chapel steps. "You shouldn't go alone," he warned. "I won't be alone," she replied, not meeting his gaze, because someone was already waiting for her beyond the ridge. His name was Kai Tahoma, a half-Navajo tracker who had once saved her father's life in a war neither of them spoke about anymore. Kai was everything Hollow Creek feared. Tall, quiet, skin the color of riverstone, eyes like a frozen lake. But Evelyn trusted him more than any man who wore a badge or stood behind a pulpit. They met under the cedar trees where the land bent toward the river. The light broke through the branches in the thin golden bars, and the wind smelled of dry sage and warning. "It's not just a fever," Kai said before she could speak. "The mountain people call it ash smoke. They say it's punishment from the spirits for disturbing the burial grounds." Evelyn's jaw tensed. "And you? What do you believe?" "I believe we've buried too many good people to let superstition do the killing." They rode side by side into the high country, where the trees grew crooked and the shadows seemed older than time. Along the way, Evelyn noticed things: dead birds near water sources, tracks of deer running in unnatural patterns, silence where cicadas should have been singing. Red Hollow came into view just before nightfall, a scattered cluster of cabins, some already abandoned. Smoke curled weakly from a single chimney. They approached slowly. Inside the last standing cabin, a woman lay in bed, her skin blotched with red and her breath shallow. A little boy sat beside her, eyes wide with fear. Evelyn's heart cracked. The fever was real and cruel. As she knelt by the woman's side, Kai stood by the door, scanning the woods with the calm of a man who'd lived through ambushes and betrayals. "Someone's watching," he said after a moment. Evelyn didn't look up. "I know." The next morning, as mist hugged the ground, 3 riders arrived at Red Hollow. One wore a long duster and a gun belt slick with blood. His name was Malcolm Vane, a former cavalry officer turned bounty hunter. He didn't come for the sick. He came for Kai. Kai didn't move when Malcolm Vane dismounted, but Evelyn could feel the air shift, the same way it did before a storm. Vane walked like a man used to owning fear. He tipped his hat, not out of courtesy, but to let them see his eyes. Cold, calculating. "Well, I'll be," he drawled. "Kai Tahoma. Thought you died 3 years back, somewhere near Snake River." "I didn't," Kai replied flatly, hands still near the knife strapped at his thigh. Vane chuckled and spat into the dirt. "Pity. There's a reward on your head, friend. Dead or breathing. Doesn't much matter to me." Evelyn rose, placing herself between the bed and the door. "There's a plague in this cabin. You'd be smart to stay back." Vane's men shifted nervously, but he didn't flinch. "Don't much care for smart. I care for what's owed." Kai's eyes narrowed. "And what's owed, Vane?" "You remember Fort Travis?" Vane said, lips curling. 3 dead scouts, 2 of them carved up like firewood. Captain said it was Apache, but I knew better." Kai's jaw tightened. "I wasn't at Fort Travis." But your brother was, Vane growled. And that's close enough. Evelyn stepped forward. This man saved my life. Saved my father's life. He's not who you think he is. I don't care who he is to you, miss, Vane replied, eyes flicking toward her like a snake before it strikes. I care about the bounty and the message it sends when I bring in a ghost. Kai didn't wait for the shot. He tackled Evelyn to the floor just as a bullet split the cabin wall. Wood splintered, the sick woman cried out, and the boy began screaming. Everything erupted. Kai rolled, dragging Evelyn behind the bed while drawing his knife. Another bullet pierced the window, narrowly missing them. He grabbed Evelyn's satchel and whispered, "Take the child. Through the back. Go. I'm not leaving you. Evelyn, go!" There was steel in his voice, the kind she couldn't argue with. She nodded once and grabbed the boy, ducking low as she moved toward the rear door, hidden behind a half-broken shelf. Outside, snow had begun to fall, soft flakes drifting down like silent warnings. Evelyn ran for the woods, heart pounding, clutching the boy whose face was buried in her coat. Gunshots echoed behind her. 2, 3, then silence. She didn't look back. They reached the cedar grove as the last light faded. There, Evelyn found a hollow beneath a rock ledge where she'd once hidden supplies for the clinic. She wrapped the child in blankets, whispered calm into his ears, and waited, praying to a god she didn't fully trust anymore. When Kai emerged from the trees an hour later, blood on his sleeve and dirt across his face, Evelyn almost sobbed. "You're hurt," she said, reaching for him. "It's not mine," he said. "One of Vane's men won't be riding again. The other 2 fled." "And Vane?" Kai didn't answer. That night, as the wind moaned through the pines and the boy slept between them, Evelyn reached out and touched Kai's shoulder. "They'll come again," she whispered. "I know." "Then why stay?" "Because I promised my people I'd find the cure," he said, voice low. "And because I promised myself I'd never let them hurt someone like you." Evelyn leaned her head against him, the amulet around her neck, woven from her mother's hair and Kai's feathers, glowing faintly under the moonlight. "They'll call us traitors," she murmured. "They already do." Kai's hand found hers in the dark. "Then let them speak while we save the ones they left behind." By morning, the forest no longer felt like refuge. The snow had stopped, but the stillness that followed felt unnatural. Evelyn rose before dawn, gathering the last of her herbs while Kai stood guard near the edge of the grove. The fever in the boy had broken, but he was weak, too weak to travel far. They needed shelter. They needed time. "What now?" she asked, her voice a quiet ripple through the cold. Kai scanned the treetops before answering. "We go east. There's an abandoned station near Black Elk Ridge. It's not safe, but it's hidden." Evelyn looked down at the child whose breaths were shallow but steady. "And the rest of your people? The ones still sick?" Kai didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched beside the boy, placing 2 fingers on his wrist, as if reading a silent pulse from the earth itself. "We're running out of time," he finally said. They left before the sun crested the canyon rim, moving in silence. The trail wound through stone and shadow, deer paths barely visible beneath frost and fallen needles. Evelyn rode with the boy in her arms, wrapped in wool and warmth, while Kai led the horse on foot, scanning for tracks that didn't belong. He found them near the ridge, boot prints, fresh, heavy, headed in the same direction. "Redfield's men," Kai muttered. Evelyn felt the heat rise in her throat. "Then they're not just after you." "No," Kai said. "Now they're after whatever it is we're trying to protect." They reached the station by dusk. The structure was half buried in vines and weather, its roof sagging from years of snow. But it had walls, a fireplace, and most importantly, quiet. Kai built a fire while Evelyn tended to the boy. The warmth brought color back to his cheeks, but Evelyn could still feel the weight of death lingering in the corners of the room, like smoke that wouldn't lift. "He's fighting," she said. "But whatever this sickness is, it's not natural." Kai glanced over his shoulder. "It isn't." "What do you mean?" He fed another log to the fire. "There are stories, among the elders, of sicknesses born from broken packs. When land is taken, when bones are disturbed, sometimes the earth doesn't forgive. Sometimes it fights back." Evelyn hugged herself. the chill not from the wind but from memory. Redfield's been hunting in sacred ground. Kai nodded. Digging where he shouldn't. Greedy men awaken ancient things, and they always think they can tame what they find. The silence between them thickened. Outside, the wind howled like something alive. Then came the knock. Not loud, not forceful, just 3 soft taps on the wooden door. Kai rose slowly, hand drifting to his knife. Evelyn pulled the boy close, heart drumming in her throat. "Who is it?" Kai called. No answer. Another knock. Then a whisper, so faint it might have been the wind. "Evelyn!" She froze. Her name, her mother's voice. That was impossible. Kai stepped back, grabbing her wrist. "Don't open it!" "But it's not her." Something scraped the outside wall. Then silence. The boy began to cry. They didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Kai found strange symbols etched into the frost on the windows, spirals and claw marks that hadn't been there before. Signs from a world Evelyn had never wanted to believe in. A world she now feared they'd stirred too deeply. "Whatever this sickness is," she said, eyes wide, "it doesn't just kill. It calls." Kai touched her cheek, grounding her. "Then we call louder. We call with light, with fire, with hope. But how do we fight something we can't see?" Kai stepped back into the snow, eyes on the trail ahead. "By walking where they fear to follow." The boy stirred as the morning light filtered through the broken shutters. His breathing was still shallow, but the tremors had stopped. Evelyn pressed her hand to his forehead. Cool. She blinked back tears, a whisper of gratitude escaping her lips. "He's not out of danger," Kai said softly, crouched beside the hearth. "But the worst may have passed." Evelyn nodded. "It's not just herbs, is it?" Kai looked up. "No." She didn't press further. She knew now that the lines between science and spirit blurred under skies like these. Some cures were born of roots and heat, others of blood and bone. They ate in silence. Dried meat, hard bread, melted snow in tin cups. Outside, the wind had calmed. The trees stood solemn and alert, like witnesses to things no one dared to speak aloud. "We can't stay," Kai said. "Redfield's not far." "Then we move?" He shook his head. "Not yet." He pulled out a thin strip of hide from his satchel, unrolling it onto the floor. A map, but not the kind Evelyn was used to. No names, no towns, only curves of rivers, animal trails, markings carved in charcoal and ochre. Symbols that pulsed with meaning older than ink. "There's a place," Kai said, pointing to a black crescent near the top of the map. "The hollow tree. My grandmother's people say it drinks sickness." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "A tree? It's not just a tree. It's where the oldest stories go to sleep, where the earth listens." She didn't mock him. Not after what they'd heard the night before. "How far?" 2 days, maybe 3, if we avoid the hunter trails." Evelyn looked down at the boy. "Can he make it?" Kai didn't answer. He didn't need to. The question wasn't whether the boy could survive the journey. It was whether he could survive anything else. They left before midday. The woods were quieter than they should have been. No birds. No distant calls of fox or coyote. Only the crunch of snow beneath hooves and boots. Evelyn rode with the boy cradled against her chest, wrapped in woolen prayers. By dusk they reached the ridge of stones, an ancient line of boulders carved by time and wind. Kai halted them there. "We sleep here," he said. "Beyond this line, the world is older, wilder." Evelyn dismounted, legs stiff from the ride. She laid the boy down on a bed of pine needles, pulling the blanket tighter around him. As Kai built a small fire, she watched the shadows dance across the rocks, forming shapes her eyes didn't want to follow. "Do you believe," she asked, "that something meant for this to happen?" Kai didn't look up. The land remembers. When blood is spilled on soil that once sang, the echoes carry. Some say it's vengeance. Others say it's balance. But the boy, he's innocent. Kai finally looked at her. Balance doesn't choose. It simply restores. Evelyn hugged her knees to her chest. "Then why are we running?" "We're not." He reached over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We're returning." They took turns keeping watch that night. When it was Evelyn's turn, she sat by the fire with her rifle across her lap, the boy's soft breaths grounding her. The stars above seemed closer here, sharp, unblinking, watching. Somewhere deep in the woods, a howl echoed. But it didn't sound like a wolf. It sounded like something that remembered what wolves used to be. She whispered her mother's lullaby, low and slow, until even the forest seemed to breathe with her rhythm. By morning, the boy was stronger. His eyes fluttered open, just for a moment, and met Evelyn's. "You're safe," she told him. "We're going to the tree." His lips moved, barely a whisper. "The one that sings?" Evelyn froze. Kai turned toward them. "What did he say?" She repeated it, heart pounding. Kai looked toward the east where the trail disappeared into mist and pine. "He dreams of the hollow tree," he said. "The land is listening." The trail curved like a scar through the forest, narrow, winding, and wet with melted snow. The air grew colder with each mile. The trees taller, older, their trunks covered in thick moss that seemed to whisper when the wind touched it. Evelyn adjusted the boy in her arms. His fever had returned in waves during the night, though less violently than before. Still, she could feel the tremble in his bones. He was fighting, but running out of strength. Kai moved ahead, silent but alert, eyes sweeping every corner of the woods. His bow stayed strung. He knew they weren't alone anymore. "They're behind us," he said quietly without turning. Evelyn's grip tightened. "How close?" "Close enough to smell the smoke we left last night. But not close enough to hear what we heard," she said, glancing toward the woods, where strange echoes had filled the dark. Not voices, not animals. Something older. Kai nodded. "The forest is shifting. It knows." By midday, they reached a clearing where 3 great stones rose like broken teeth from the earth. There, Kai stopped. "This is the gate." Evelyn stared. "To what?" He stepped aside, pointing beyond the stones. A single tree stood at the center of a sunken grove, its trunk wide as a cabin, its roots thick as limbs, twisting deep into the ground like a hand clutching the heart of the world. Its bark shimmered faintly in the dim light, and mist coiled at its base like breath. "The hollow tree," Kai said. "You don't walk into it. You ask." Evelyn's voice dropped. "Ask who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the stones, knelt, and placed a bundle of sage, a carved bone, and a small strip of red cloth on the ground. Then he spoke in Cheyenne, low, rhythmic words that trembled in the air like drum beats felt under the skin. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Then the wind shifted, the mist parted, and a hollow opened in the base of the tree. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She clutched the boy and stepped forward. Inside, the air was warmer, sweet, thick with the scent of cedar, earth, and something faintly metallic. The roots above her head pulsed with a soft golden glow. The boy whimpered, his eyes fluttering. She laid him down in the cradle of moss at the center of the tree. "What do I do now?" she whispered. "You wait," Kai replied from the entrance. "If the tree accepts him, it will take the sickness. And if it doesn't?" He looked away. Evelyn knelt and placed her hand on the boy's chest. His breathing was shallow, too shallow. She pressed her forehead to his and closed her eyes. She didn't pray to God. Not this time. She spoke to the tree, to the land, to the thing older than the cross and the rifle. She didn't know the words, but her heart spoke in ways lips never could. Then slowly the roots began to glow brighter. The ground beneath them vibrated, faint like a heartbeat awakening. A hum filled the air. The boy gasped. His body arched once, then settled. Still. Too still. "No," Evelyn whispered, cradling his head. "Please." But his eyes opened, clear, focused. His fever had broken. "I heard singing," he said, voice small. "From the stars." Kai knelt beside her, his face a mixture of awe and sorrow. "The tree took his sickness," Evelyn turned to him. "Will it come back?" Kai looked toward the bark, now dull again, the glow fading. But there is always a cost." Before Evelyn could ask, the wind screamed through the clearing. A sudden, violent gust. Outside, gunshots cracked like lightning. "Redfield." Kai stood, bow drawn. "Get the boy out. I'll hold them." "No!" Evelyn stood too. "You can't fight them alone." I won't be alone, he said, eyes fierce. This is sacred ground. The forest will remember. As he stepped outside, the roots shifted behind them, closing the hollow. Evelyn ran, the boy on her back, heart pounding. Branches parted before her. Roots lifted to clear her path. The forest was alive, angry. She heard shouting, screams, and then silence. She didn't look back. Not until she reached the edge of the woods and saw the black smoke curling above the trees. She waited. Minutes. Hours. Then through the trees, Kai appeared. Limping, bloodied, but alive. She ran to him, and for the first time, he let himself fall into her arms. It's done, he said. Redfield won't harm another soul. They said nothing more. Somewhere beyond them, the hollow tree stood, still, ancient, and full of memory. And in the fading light of day, Evelyn knew something had shifted, not just in her, not just in the boy, but in the land itself. The plains were silent in the wake of Redfield's fall. Snow had returned, soft and light, covering the scars of pursuit, the broken branches, the blood in the soil, the boot prints of men who had come with guns and left with nothing. Evelyn stood at the edge of the village now. The boy, Awan, ran ahead of her, his laughter slicing through the still morning air like sunlight through mist. His cheeks, once pale and fevered, now glowed with life. He played with other children near the riverbank, unaware of how close he had come to slipping away. She watched him with a heart full of quiet gratitude and pain. Because even though he lived, others had not. 6 elders, 3 mothers, too many children whose names she would never forget. The sacred water had slowed the fire, but it had not stopped it everywhere. Some healing took more than medicine. It needed time and truth. Inside the elder lodge, Kai waited. He sat cross-legged beside Walking Bear, who sipped a dark brew from a clay cup, his ancient hands steady as stone. You brought the water, the old man said to Evelyn when she entered. But not just that. You brought memory, and memory has power. Kai rose, eyes searching hers. The spirits say it is time. Evelyn nodded. She had known this moment was coming. The truth had to be spoken. So they called the council. Settlers and Cheyenne alike gathered near the river. Some came hesitantly, some didn't come at all. But enough stood beneath the cedar moon to hear what needed to be said. Evelyn stepped forward first. My name is Evelyn Carter, she said, voice steady, eyes on the crowd. I was raised to heal, not just wounds, but misunderstandings, fears, lies. She paused. This boy, Awan, was dying, not from what lives in the blood, but from what poisons the heart, hatred, fear of the other. He survived because a man many of you would call an enemy risked everything to save him. She turned to Kai, who stepped forward. I am Kai, he said, Cheyenne, warrior, and son of this land. But more than that, I am witness. Then he told them what Redfield had done, the false trails, the stolen medicines. The men he left behind in the forest, their greed louder than their bullets. He did not speak with anger. He spoke with sorrow, and silence followed his words. Long, heavy. Until Reverend Thomas, Evelyn's father, stepped into the circle. My daughter betrayed me, he said. She lied. She broke rules. She walked away from her name. He looked at her then, and his eyes shimmered. But she did it for the right reasons. The crowd shifted. I once believed that duty to God meant obedience, but now I see duty to God means compassion, truth, bravery, and I see God more clearly in what she's done than in 100 sermons. He turned to Kai. And I see him in you too. Kai bowed his head. The river rushed behind them, full and clear. The trees stood tall in silence. Then an elder settler woman, white hair tied in braids, stepped forward. My grandson died last winter. Fever. We buried him without understanding why. If someone like her had come, then he might still be here. She looked at Evelyn. I can't change what happened, but maybe we can change what happens next. That night they lit no torches. No guns were kept at the gates. Instead they sat around fires, Cheyenne and settlers alike, and listened to each other, to the wind, to the stories that had once divided them and could now unite them. Later, when the fires had turned to embers, Evelyn walked with Kai to the river. The moon hung above them, thin and silver, like a scar healed over. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. Kai looked at the water. "Only if we remember." They stood in silence, hand in hand, two souls from different worlds made one by courage, sacrifice, and a love that had dared to speak across centuries of silence. And when Evelyn looked up at the sky, she no longer saw the distance between stars. Only the light, only the promise, only the way forward. And so, across these unforgiving lands, another tale drifts away with the wind. If this quiet courage, this stubborn heart touched you in any way, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and pass this story on to someone who needs it. Don't forget to subscribe, because out here there are still so many truths left to tell, each one carved from pain, hope, and dust. This is Wild West Stories. Thank you for watching.